Welcome to the Teach First Pathways CV workshop. The Pathways Careers team within Teach First provide career support and advice to ambassadors and second year participants. And today we're going to run through a CV workshop that we've composed to help you write a very strong and professional CV. The Pathways team also provides support you do with applications, cover letters and interviews, as well as summer projects, career coaching, CPD opportunities and resources. So today we're going to go through a few things. We're going to discuss choosing the right format for your experience and how to write and articulate your CV. Think about your personal statement, your profile, and what you include in it to make you stand out through an application. Thinking around revisioning your experience and transferable skills, and then some kind of do's and don'ts and pitfalls and mistakes that we've noticed over the years that we wanted to pass through to you. So firstly, there are two different types of CV. There is a chronological or skills-based CV. Chronological is the most common, and it really focuses on presenting the candidate's experience in a chronological order with the most recent experience first. A skills-based CV really highlights transferable skills to employers. It emphasizes particular skills, very niche skills often, that would be for a specific role they are applying for, and is often also used for career changes or people who may have had employment gaps on their CVs. So most likely it would be that chronological option that you would be looking at. So firstly, we wanted to go through in more detail with you around personal statements and profiles. So the personal statement, the professional statement really focuses on your unique value proposition. It really draws the reader's attention to your most important qualities, your skills, your achievements and your abilities. And it will start to build a picture in that reader's mind of who you are and what you can bring, what value you can bring to the organisation and how you also fit with that particular role while you're applying for it. So it should be located at the top of your CV, underneath your name and contact details. And we would recommend having it quite a short paragraph, around 2 to 3 sentences, having it punchy, just including what the reader needs to know, and then having it dynamic, so covering all of your key skills. I recommend having 3 sentences to structure it. This stops you having it as an overlong paragraph. So the sentence can include firstly who you are, second sentence your skill set, and your third sentence what your next steps are. So also really tailoring those 3 sentences to each job that you're applying for. So what I'd like to ask you to do now is a personal statement exercise. So firstly, thinking about your experience and the skills that you use, trying to pull out 5 key words of unique skills or very desirable skills that an employer would look for from when you were thinking about your experience and skills, and just make a note of them. So after you've done that, if you could just read and review your current statement, your current profile, if you have one, and then thinking if it reflects those skills that you sentence rule. Again, that was the first sentence, who you are, second sentence, your skill set, and third sentence, what you're looking for next. So I recommend pausing the webinar for around 3 to 4 minutes, just to give you a bit of time to think about your experience and skills in detail. And as I mentioned, pulling out those 5 words, and we'll speak to you soon. So next, I would like everyone to look at writing their personal statement. So incorporating the feedback from that last exercise that you took yourself and thinking about the 3 sentences, those key skills that you wanted to bring out and how to put that into a very clear context. And if you could take about 5 minutes, again, pausing your webinar to start looking at that and pulling and shaping that personal sentence. So following on, hopefully you've now started to develop your personal profile, if not completed. So we have put through a list of some personal statements we've helped people develop or we've written ourselves and we think really stand out, and they really give a picture of what that person is like and what that person is looking for. And as I mentioned previously, really pulling out their very, very strong skill set and experience to what's unique and what would be specific for that role they're applying for. So I'm just going to give you a few seconds just to have a glance through all of them and have a think about those, and do they sound a similar pitch to your current personal statement you've just developed. So next, I wanted to go through a CV checklist, some do's and some don'ts. So firstly, what to include, your contact details. So I would recommend including your name, your email address, and your number, and maybe your postcode. Often by putting your full address on your CV, it takes up quite a lot of room, and you really want to keep that space to be able to use it for explaining your skills and explaining your achievements, rather than using it for that. So then including your personal statement. So as we discussed right at the top of the CV, then either your education and qualifications or your work experience. If you have a particular qualification that is very relevant to the role you're applying for, or they've put it as desirable within that person's specification and that job description, I would recommend putting that first, and then your work experience. But more often than not, it would be your work experience or your education, and it wouldn't have a big impact of which one is leading. Next, if you do have voluntary experience, I recommend pulling this into a separate section of your CV. It shows real commitment, it shows a desire to support, social impact, and to make a difference. And then finally, relevant skills. So these would be skills that might be using a particular database, using a particular system, thinking about the skills that they've asked for in that job description and person specification if you're applying for a particular role, and then thinking if there's any more desirable skills there that you know you have, pulling those out and including those on your CV as well. So what to exclude? Discriminatory information, so anything age, sex, nationality, marital status, family responsibilities. Firstly, it's relevant for the application, and people would be assessing you on your experience and skill set and potential to perform in a role, not on your personal information. And also you don't want to include anything that could be used discriminatory against you. As I just mentioned, your full address, taking up a lot of room, interests, unless they're directly related to the role or to the organisation you're applying for, then they're not relevant for your application. You see a lot of generic interests on CVs, socialising with friends, going to the cinema, eating different restaurants, and they don't add any value to your application. So if they don't, then I would delete them. Also references. They're not needed at the initial stage of application. If they are, then they will be specified and often included in an application form. And again, similar to your address, they take up a lot of room on your CV. So thinking about deleting those references off there. So just some top tips in regards to formatting your CV. Firstly, being consistent. So ensuring that all the way through the CV, the title, organisation and dates, it's in the same format, it's in the same font type, and it's displayed the same throughout the pages. It's something we see very often is people italic certain words on their CV or they bold certain words on their CV. It is meant to then make it stand out. But to be honest, from a reader's perspective, it actually makes it quite confusing when you're looking at a CV, and it makes it less clear. And something to bear in mind when you're pulling together your CV is a reader maybe looking at hundreds of CVs for a particular role they're recruiting for. So they may be looking at your CV for 15 seconds, 30 seconds. You want to make sure it's clear and concise and very easy to read so they can pull that information out immediately. So again, bear that in mind when you're thinking about that formatting, but also the content you put in it. I see a lot of CVs where they haven't mentioned Teach First at all, and they haven't mentioned the Leadership Development Programme. Something to remember is that everybody has not heard of the Leadership Development Programme, or they don't know what the acronym LDP stands for, and the same goes for Teach First. So think about just putting a descriptive sentence of what that is to ensure you are selling it as well. And also making your CV readable. So utilising white space, keeping it under 2 pages is really key. Bullet pointing your experience so it's not a really big bulk of text. And we've put on the right-hand side of the slide there some examples, firstly of what not to do, and then lastly what to do. So we also see people put Teach First as the employer on a CV, which is not correct. The employer would be the school or organisation you are working in. So ensuring that you're including that. And if you want to put the Teach First Leadership Development Programme on there, then you can do and explain it below, or explain it in a summary sentence below. So what I'd like you to do now is just really think about your current role, think about what you do in your position, what you enjoy in your position, what tasks and responsibilities you do, and think about it as a whole, and thinking what you would include in your CV, an application or an interview. And I'm just going to give you a couple of minutes to do that. So again, I recommend pausing the webinar and pausing it when you're ready. So did you remember to include and think about all of your core responsibilities, all of your key achievements, any mentoring or any coaching relationships that you may have, any times that you've collaborated with other members of the team or other teams of the departments? Did you mention current projects and interventions, presenting at meetings to stakeholders, and managing and developing others? And thinking around, do you analyse data? Did you pull that into your experience? Do you manage budgets? Do you plan events? And do you have targets and KPIs that you meet? And really importantly, do you exceed them as well? Because that's a really fantastic selling point to think about. So I'm just going to give you a few seconds just to have a quick look at that list. If there's anything in there that you didn't include, I'd recommend just making a note of it so you can look at that for your full CV. So how to lay out your professional experience. Firstly, using bullet points, as I mentioned, it's a lot easier for recruiters to read. Starting your bullet points and ensuring that you're using strong action words through that. You demonstrated, you implemented. Thinking also around having it, as the formatting mentioned a few slides back, having the job title, organisation you work with, and the dates and location. And then below that, I recommend having an opening sentence, just really putting into context what your role is and where your role is. It also allows you to pull in anything unique that's about your role. If you're working in a new school, if you co-founded or if you co-lead the organisation you work in, if you have any particular responsibilities, if you work in a challenging school, then again, remember to include this. These are things that people may not be able to see from your experience, and you want to make sure that the reader has as much information as possible clearly. So underneath that sentence, I recommend having a title of key responsibilities and putting bullet points, around 4 to 6 bullet points in total of what your key responsibilities are. And then after this, having a title of key achievements. So a really, really important part of your CV is to be able to demonstrate your success and demonstrate where you may have taken on additional responsibilities and excelled as well. So thinking about your impact that you have had, thinking if you can demonstrate it using data to make it an even stronger example. So an example may be that you implemented a new project within the classroom and the grade level raised from X to Y over a period of a year, or attendance improved due to a particular initiative that you ran. And again, using any statistics you can to really support that and strengthen it really takes your application to that next level. And again, thinking about the role that you're applying for, thinking that if the application is relevant to that, And are the skills, are the achievements relevant to the next step, the next application? So in terms of revisioning your experience and thinking about tailoring it, what I would always recommend doing is thinking why you are applying for a particular role. Is it the organisation? Is it what the job includes? Is it what you've done previously? Is it brand new? So thinking about how you then want to describe that, both through your CV, through the application process, and probably to that interview stage as well. So I recommend highlighting the key skills and competencies in the role description, especially if it's a brand new role in a brand new sector that you're stepping into. So you can make sure that you're matching that up with your CV throughout and that you're demonstrating them, and looking at what skills you have that are transferable, and are they reflected in your CV as well? Have you looked at what the required essential skills are, and can someone pull that out of the experience that you have listed? And then in terms of transferable skills, I recommend thinking about the leadership development program, reflecting on where you were before joining it, and then reflect on your years in teaching it since you've had that. So what have you learned? What have you achieved? Thinking about your skills, and then thinking about how you can transfer them to be recognisable in a different sector. So we have put some examples below, but on the next slide, there's a more detailed list of examples. So I'm just going to flick through to that now. So this is a chart that we have put together, and it really goes through teaching experience and skills and tasks that you may undertake on a regular basis, and then transfers that to either on a more basic level, what that skill means, or thinking about on a transferable level, how it can be described. So firstly, around delivering a lesson, which is demonstrating planning and organising. Then having new tasks given to be delivered in a set time, which is managing multiple priorities to conflicting deadlines. Working with parents, colleagues, managers and governors is managing stakeholder relationships with diverse groups. Tracking pupil data is monitoring and evaluation. Analysing pupil data is research and analytical skills. Organising a school trip is event organisation. Lesson observations demonstrates an ability to work under pressure. Planning new lessons is being creative, being innovative. Facilitating learning and development is managing projects. Supporting newly qualified teachers is staff development. Delivering lessons is presenting. Changing lesson plans with short notice is adaptable and flexible. And working in a challenging school demonstrates resilience. Convincing a pupil to engage with a task is influencing another. And then working with a colleague on a task is being collaborative. So these are probably tasks that you undertake on a regular basis or have done previously. And I think they're definitely worth thinking about how these can now be demonstrated. And this list hopefully will be able to sit down and then pull out examples of when you've demonstrated each one of these skills. And I think that's extremely transferable. So hopefully you had a few minutes as well there just to note down the skills. I'll just leave it a few more seconds in case you need to. So our corporate partners provide us with a list of the most sought after skills they look for when recruiting. And the top 10 is the ability to work under pressure, being adaptable, being flexible, being analytical, collaborative, combining big picture thinking and fine detail, having commercial awareness. This is always something to bear in mind as well if you are stepping into a new industry, thinking before you're doing that application and interview that you are doing research around the industry. So although you may be new, you can still demonstrate an understanding of what that industry is, what challenges it may face, and what successes it may have had. So number 7, communication. Number 8, being creative, being innovative. Number 9, leadership. And finally 10, organisation and prioritisation. So we finally have a list of common mistakes that we see quite a lot, and kind of what and some do nots to do to bear in mind when you're applying. So firstly, not tailoring your CV to the role. It's really important. Not mentioning the Teach First Leadership Development Programme, not proofreading, and extremely important. We have had previously people provide excellent CVs and excellent application letters. However, they haven't been moved to that interview stage because they had a few spelling errors in that CV. So it's very, very important to take that time and proofread. And if you need a friend or a colleague to proofread as well, it can be hard doing it for your own work, then do pass it over to them as well. Not using relevant examples, not demonstrating your role, your responsibilities, your achievement, and your impact, not having your CV in reverse chronological order, having an inconsistent format, too much text, and using the wrong tense for your current and previous roles. So hopefully after this session, you will have been able to look at pulling together a strong personal statement. You'll be able to tailor your CV to the role, know to use a consistent format and demonstrate your experience, to highlight your key achievements, know your transferable skills, ensure how you are showing your impact, and ensuring that you are proofreading as well. So thank you very much for participating in our webinar. We really hope you found it very useful. If you would like any further information or support with interviews, then please do contact us. There's the ambassador's email address below. And good luck with writing your CV.